Welcome to another episode of Cutting Edge Health and discussions about why haven't I heard about TMS before? TMS stands for Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation. If we haven't met before, my name is Dr. Orlando Landrum. So I am a physician that helps patients figure out how to be able to punch pain in the face and get back to leading the life that they deserve, whether we're talking about physical pain or mental pain. And we've talked about transcranial magnetic stimulation in a number of other videos, but today what we're really going to kind of help answer a question that I hear fairly frequently is, I've heard of different treatments for depression, from physical to us being able to do talk therapy to medications and things of that ilk, but TMS is something I haven't heard about before. What the heck is that? And why haven't I, is this something that's new, right? And why haven't I heard of it before? So we take a look. There's a number of machines that are out there on the market for TMS, quite a few as a matter of fact, more so than what I think most people in the lay public actually know. And it has been in existence for quite some time. We're going to actually use a paper to be able to kind of reference that. And as you guys know, who join the channel with some degree of frequency, we like to be able to reference literature so that people can have an understanding about what's taking place. And so that paper that we're going to talk about today is Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation, a historical evaluation and future prognosis of therapeutically relevant ethical concerns. So heck of a mouthful, but basically it's going to give you an orientation of how long TMS has been out, what it has gone through into various different hoops to be able to prove not only its efficacy, but also its safety. So in traditional language, meaning how well does it work and is it safe? And then we're going to kind of go historically and kind of back order that, right? So TMS itself, if you really wanted to kind of look at like history, is the utilization of electrical therapy for health, right? And that has been decades, actually hundreds of years, going all the way back to when people used the elements of animals to be able to do that. Things like electrical eels to be able to provide traditional pain relief, similar to what, if you've heard of a TENS unit before, things of that ilk and that nature, right? But be able to use it in the context of depression probably has its history in things like ECT. So ECT stands for electroconvulsive therapy, which previously was used for people that had depression and other maladies that kind of were in place. But TMS itself is different than that because it's not this electrical current that's shocking someone. Instead, it's different. It's using transcranial magnetic stimulation. So magnetic components really deal with things that come from Michael Faraday. And so Faraday was one of those individuals who first proved that by using magnet in the components of a circle, you're able to develop an electrical current. And so this pictorial or graphical representation I'm about to show you kind of is in essence the way that TMS sort of works. So it uses a coil that has magnetic component that is a driver, and that magnetic produces electrical impulses, and that electrical impulses is able to change different elements, but specifically we think that it helps change kind of the aspect of neurotransmitters and potentially also improve the connectivity of the brain, right? So when we get into that paper that I mentioned to you before, it has two major figures that really kind of provide most of the benefit of understanding what TMS is about. One is this figure one. And this figure one, as you can see, dates all the way back to the 1700s, where they're able to use electrical energy to be able to stimulate cells. And it goes all the way through the elements of Dr. Anthony Barker, who's really the true founder of TMS. And if you can kind of see this on the far right-hand side, that was in 1985. For those of you who have lived through that time frame, you're like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. But for those of you who are really kind of putting that in context, that's the year's 2023 right now. Originally, when he first looked at magnetic pulsing device, it was actually in 1976. So this has been something that has been out there for quite some time. And most people would say, well, yeah, it might have been out here, but how utilized was it from a clinical state? So we talk about a clinical state and utilization. Figure 2 really kind of gives us some element of being able to kind of understand that. So figure 2 itself starts with a date that really looks at around 1988, give or take, where you had this development of the figure 8 coil, which we're going to explain a little bit further and kind of get into that. But at the end of the day, it was the utilization of repetitive TMS predominantly for being able to look at how can it improve depression. If you look at the bottom numbers down here and the areas in here, you can see in 1995 and 1998 was the first meeting of the TMS safety consensus group. And there was a study that was published by Wasserman in 1998 that looked at risk and safety guidelines. And then there was a second meeting in 2007 that went along with an O'Riordan publishing a depression study using the NeuroStar system. And finally, in the end over here in 2009, you see the FDA approves for the defined treatment of depression for TMS. So it's been since around 2009 that we've been able to kind of see that component and utilization of TMS being approved by the FDA, right? There's been a number of studies that have looked at and referenced TMS, and it actually has been historical, more so than what I think most people think. It has been early utilizations of using magnet and electrical energy to try to be able to produce something of some similar ilk. But when we look at that study, it references from the 1900s, 1902, all the way to 1980, when you start talking about the use of magnetic and current to be able to improve things. So when most people say, I've never heard of this TMS before, I just don't understand. And how has this been refined and why is it different than what it was before? Even when I talk to some docs, they're like, yeah, I heard the studies weren't so great before, and I don't know if it's really working all that well. Well, kind of showing you some of the older pictures, TMS itself, as you can kind of see from these black and white photos, has been out for quite some time. And in this picture, you can see Anthony Barker, who now looks more like so, who was the original founder of TMS and actually went on to a television show and showed it in actual working formulation. How it's differed and improved since then is that since 1985, they've really been able to see that magnetic field changes how neurons are affected and how it's depolarized. But they've been able to say, hey, we can figure out a way to be able to make this even more specific, more universal, and more useful. And the ways that they've been able to do that is by generating a figure 8 coil. So if you were to take a look, this is that paper that I made reference of before. That's the Reardon component. That is the effectiveness of transcranial magnetic stim post FDA approval. And so what they were able to see is that in the 1990s, as referenced before, you have this treatment of depression. But then what they really wanted to do was to take a look at this figure 8 coil and see how much of improvement they were able to find. And what they found is this figure 8, which is 2 coils that are put together, was able to localize it better than what it otherwise was. So what that means is that the localization of that magnetic, hence that electrical energy, to the spot that is most conducive with having a response has resulted in better outcomes over time. So the simple answer when we're really kind of having this conversation of how well does TMS work and how long has this been out, so it was originally put forth as 1985 by Dr. Anthony Barker. But the fact of the matter is the FDA approval was in the early 2000s or so. So it's been out for easily 15, 20 years where there's been value that you can see is really able to provide help for those people who are suffering and be able to give them an opportunity and alternative to traditional medication that hasn't always been successful. Just a quick message for those of you who are interested in TMS. If you're interested in learning more about topics like this, please tune into our channel. If you're looking for help for something like TMS or traditional pain, by all means, check us out. There's a couple different ways to be able to kind of find us and email us and be able to get information about things like this. So if you're interested in topics like this, please join our newsletter. We can be able to help you have a better understanding about how to be able to punch pain in the face and get back to leading the life that you deserve. Thank you so much and have a great day.